Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jodielynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
So, Jodielynn, I have to ask you, did you bring your warm-up outfit today? Because we're going to be talking about exercise and being fit and mentally fit, physically fit, and all that kind of thing. So, I just wonder if you're ready.
I'm ready. It's
okay.
under a giant sweater.
It is? Oh,
yeah,
okay. Cool.
It is.
I like that.
I am ready. I've got the layers on because it's, cold.
Well, when you live in Alberta, the layers are important. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, like a couple days ago, we were minus 57, 58 degrees Fahrenheit.
Man.
Minus 57, 58 is cold.
Yeah.
That's really cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't spend a lot of time out in that weather.
No. Unless you're crazy.
Well, there are some people who do that. Let's be perfectly blunt. There are some, but the smart ones, they stay in where it's nice and toasty. They wear their layered outfits with their sweaters and so forth. So,
that's
well
right.
done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I got it underneath. I'm ready.
There you go.
I'm ready
All
for
right.
anything, guys.
Sounds great. So anyway, our guest is David Oquendo. He is the CEO of MaxFit KC. But he's not just into the physical fitness. He's also into the mental fitness in the sense of the kinds of things we talk about here on the show, the energy, the synergy, the ways we set our mindset, all that kind of thing. And so we figured we'll just have a conversation about, and we'll also probably talk about fitness too, but we'll just have a conversation about that today. So David, welcome to the program. How you doing today?
Doing wonderful, man. Doing wonderful.
Sounds great. So, let's get a little background first. Let's talk about how you got to be running this fitness outfit there in KC, and what kind of led to that. And then let's transition over to what we were going to talk about, which is energy and synergy and mindset and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I started off with actually 2 different degrees before I ended up in this. I had electronic engineering. Some things happened. Miscommunications between some advisors and what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
Shifted to computer information systems. Got to the end of that, realized I hated just sitting behind a desk programming. I was personal training at the time, loved it, loved the interaction with people, and just stuck with that. Got my exercise science degree, continued to build and just learn my knowledge, moved around, got to test out a bunch of places to see what I liked and didn't like about, the facilities. And so when it came to opening mine up, I was able to portray like what I thought I wanted to happen by, what I didn't see what I liked in other places. And now it's going on a little over 7 years, and it's been a massive learning experience doing actually the business part of things. But now I'm here and I've been able to develop, I would say, a better connection with what really works, which is you can have all the tools in the world you want for science behind health, but if the mindset's not there, it's very hard to make the transition to it.
Very true. Yeah. And by the way, I have to give you some credit and applause, because many people in college or just coming out of college or whatever, they're going for the money. And computer science, let's be honest, that's where the money is. You didn't go for the money. You went for the love. That's why I want to give you credit, because that's not the usual choice that gets made. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, that was, I've always had a little bit of rebellious in me, like all through school. My parents definitely had a challenge, a handful. And, part of what I think it's like we talked about is, there's some parts of us inside that really draw us towards things. And I tend to allow that to drive me. So if I feel like I want to go do something, I'm more than likely going to go do it rather than look around and see what everybody else is doing and hope that I'm following what they're doing.
So you weren't really paying much attention to following the crowd at all. That was not part of the calculus for you.
No, I'm not going to say I've always, not followed the crowd, but I tend to be the one that's more on the outlier of certain ideologies or certain beliefs and where we have to go in life.
Does the crowd follow you?
The ones that are more looking for, I would say, excitement and like authenticism, those are the ones that tend to like step out of the zone and hear it. People that aren't ready to be uncomfortable, as it gets really uncomfortable stepping out of that zone. and don't want to knock them. They're probably not where they need to be yet to want to do it, and that's great. But yeah, I'd say there's a lot of people that are ready for it. They just haven't had the message probably pop up in front of them yet that like resonates with them.
They're ready for it, but they haven't had the message pop up. Is that really possible in today's 21st century technological world to not have the message pop up?
It could be the way the message is portrayed, how they receive it, right? Like when I had my transition of understanding mentality and like emotion. So my idea now is physically fit, mentally fit, and emotionally fit. When we're able to connect those, we're really able to have a really happy and enjoyable, healthy life. But had you talked to me 7 years ago, you would have had a different person in front of you. I wasn't in the place to hear the message at that time. So no matter what the message was, it was going to fall on deaf ears.
Okay. So I got to put the pressure on and ask you, so what message would you have heard? What kind of person would be sitting in front of us today?
Okay. So the person who was set up front of you is someone who just doesn't care. Like in a sense of, a mental grind attitude. Like, I don't care who you are. You should be able to do this. It's your choice not to. Like, just get to work.
Team no excuses.
What was that?
Team no excuses.
Oh, yes. Yeah, 100%. Hardcore. I didn't care who you were. There was no excuse for where you're at. Like, it's all your fault.
This doesn't sound at all familiar, does it, Jodielynn? I'm just kind of asking.
Never. Mm-mm.
No, never heard that one. No.
Wouldn't say that I was, a very similar person 7 years ago also.
Yes. It's easy to get into. I think anybody that opens a business will have some of that in the back of their mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not an easy thing to step out of once you're like fully ingrained to that and you've built your entire life around being that person.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. Your background, my background shifted me into that. I ran into a couple of people that had the idea of opening a business. It kind of shifted my idea of what I thought success was. And then you get pinpointed on that and your brain's like, go for it. No excuses. And you kind of have, like for me, I lost compassion for other people for sure. I wasn't coaching wise. I was not a great coach because of that. I was just like, why are we not doing this? It's simple. Do this A, do this B, and do this C. You're just not doing it. You're lazy. You're not putting enough mental grind in this thing. There's always a reason why. But in reality, we're very, very complex people. We have a lot of things going on that dictate how we act, why we do things. And so luckily I was able to get out of that mode, have some people walk into my life that helped me start seeing myself differently, which led me to go, oh, we're all in some kind of thing or mentally that's probably keeping us from making the right decisions. If I'm doing it, then I need to have compassion for other people so I can see where they're coming from and actually help them make the change and not just, be a coach and yell at them like a football player coach,
Yeah.
So the Vince Lombardi style really wasn't what you were aiming for anymore.
No. When we're training, yeah, a little bit more like the physical part where it is a little bit more challenging. But when it comes to coaching and changing behaviors, definitely, I've shifted so much.
Would you say that you said it was some people walking into your life and acknowledging that within you? What was it, something that they said or the compassion that they had, or was there like some sort of moment where you caught it, or how did that work?
So I wasn't happy with where I was at, and like I was struggling with the business in a sense of like I wanted to speed up the process. And I remember reading this book called Psycho-Cybernetics, which is all about visualizations and like really feeling it inside and picturing it, which led me down a whole different path of like, well, what does that mean? What happens in our head? What happens in our hearts? To going into like seeing everybody and talking about psychedelics, to talking to other coaches that are mentally emotional coaches, and just starting to search as much as I could to find connections about what has changed or how does change happen in the head and the heart. Which led me to go, well, what am I doing? It's like this awareness. Where does my belief system come from? where am I missing out on making that connection for me to take the actions I need to make the business better? Because in reality, my gung-ho-ness is great, but if it's pointed the wrong direction, it leads me nowhere. So that happened. I had a person in my life. She went down the path earlier before me. I started to see her change and be a little more successful. And first change was success for the business. Then I got into it and was like, oh, this is success for everything in my life. My relationships, friendships, my ability to be happy, became better. Everything, not just the business. And so that was an interesting turn of events for me to see, someone else go through it and then go, well, this works. Wow. Okay. Let's try this on me.
That's pretty cool that, it was from what you're describing, I'm taking it on face value here. It sounds like it was a fairly easy transition for you. I mean, speaking for myself, I went through, mountains and valleys trying to get there, and you got there. Oh, well, I see what's going on with her. I'll do that.
Well, maybe a little bit short into the story, but my childhood
was over all the hard stuff.
My childhood was pretty rough. So I had that tough heart until I got to this, time where I was talking. So that was actually there was a lot of roughness that happened before that. So I was ready for a change. I just didn't know what it was. And then when I began to change, I knew what I wanted. So my gung-ho-ness goes, all right, we're going all in. But the change has really happened over the last 5 years, and really big started happening over the last 3, massive change over the last 3. The beginning changes happened for the first 3 or 4. So it was a slow change for sure. Every time I did something to work on myself, it was a year of implementing it before it actually stuck. Yeah. So definitely a long process, but the gung-ho-ness in me was yeah, we're going to do this. We go all in. Find coaches, find any program you can, and really push yourself.
Don't you just love Jodielynn, how he says it took him 3 years and that was a long time?
Yep. I think in the 5 years, relative to 100, let's say, right. 100, very short period of time. But that topic has come up a lot for us over the last couple of weeks.
It
a lot
has.
For me, of you think that it was, it's going to take forever. And then you look back on what happened and how much happened in the time span. And you're like, holy crap, that's a lot to happen, to go through whatever in this short period of time. It was such a small window.
Yes. And that is, when you're looking on day one, right? You see 365 days. Mm-hmm. When you look on day 365, you're like, that was fast.
Yeah.
And so for me, a lot has changed. At the same time, it feels like yesterday, maybe even 2 weeks ago that I started the process. But I can see people getting in the beginning of this and being like, I got through this program, or I did this thing and now I should be all better. And in reality, there's the shift and there's the action after the shift that we have to really stick with before the changes happen. Mm-hmm. I always speak about water on rock, right? You see water dripping on rock the first couple months, nothing happens. It takes a couple years before it starts to erode. For me, it's the same way with our old patterns. It just takes time to really start to see the changes that come from them.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that in the program yesterday that I did with my co-host Joel Elston. We were talking about how if you're trying to change a habit, most programs to change a habit are 30-day programs. But in terms of the way neurology works, in terms of the way your nervous system works, you have to get 60, 90, 100 days in before it's actually nailed into the system. Yes. Which is probably why most 30-day programs don't really work out the way they expected them to.
Yeah.
Because even if they get something to happen in 30 days, it doesn't stick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like the idea, if I'm going to allude to a habit formation, if I do it to the point where I feel uncomfortable not doing it, that's when it's a habit. So my goal is if I pick a new habit up, I have to do it for 100 days no matter what. It's a 100-day tally. If I don't see a change in 100 days, then I'm allowed to quit. But I always have to do it for 100 days. That's my tally mark. So if I'm walking for 10 minutes a day, I'm meditating, I have to do it 100 times. And then at the end of 100 times, if nothing's changed, that's when I'm allowed to quit.
Neuroscientists around the world are going, yay, hooray, hooray.
Yeah. It's hard. Not seeing the same, I get it. Not seeing results and putting the effort in is a real big challenge. So that's why I like to have more of my goal is to do 100 times rather than see the change. Because I know if I do it long enough, the change will come. If I don't do it long enough, I won't see the change and I'll be frustrated. And I'll in my mind, I'll think, well, that didn't work.
Makes sense.
But you haven't given it enough time to work.
Hey, Jodielynn, my screen as usual is doing like a little freeze. So I'm going to let you do the next question while I do a reboot here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, there was one question that was kind of like cropping up in my mind. And I don't know if you felt this. You said you kind of had a tumultuous childhood and like you were tough. Did you find that there was any point through your like breaking open journey, if you will, that you were scared or resistant of that, letting that facade, that face, that, you know, that tough exterior, letting go of that? Was that hard?
Yeah, it's still hard. It's still, a mechanism that pops up that I've got to like quiet down. I remember one of my coaches was very truthful with me. He says, you're never going to let this go away. It's just not going to happen, but we'll take the volume from 90% down to 15%. It's much more manageable to handle things at a 15 than at a 95.
Yeah.
So just realize that this part of you it's there. It's been hardwired for a long time, but doesn't mean that it has to run your life. And so when I was first like switching over and having these conversations with myself and other people and coaches, and one of the biggest things for me was I remember when I was probably like 13 or 14 and I was like, I'll never be unhappy again. I'm just not going to be unhappy. And so I avoided any emotion that was sad whatsoever because the childhood things that happened made me sad. So it was like, as you know, sad goes to anger. So anger was my like step back into if something sad was going to happen or something that made me feel hurt was going to happen. So that part of me was one thing that was really hard to be vulnerable about. And I remember the first like breakdown I had. I think I cried for an hour straight, which is weird because I didn't cry since I was like 13, 14. Wow. So, you know, I was 33, I'd say. And I'm about to be 38 right now. So at 33, I had that moment and it just constant for a whole hour straight. And I was like, what is this? I don't know what this is. I haven't experienced this, you know, and it's really, I didn't actually want to even say that I was crying to people. I didn't want to even, you know, explain to people what happened to me. But after that, I really started to pay attention to, you know, understanding, you know, what I was doing before then to keep all that at bay and just avoiding it to going, okay, well, this is actually what living life is, like understanding emotions, feeling them and working through them. And so after that vulnerability scare of, oh crap, I'm about to just be around people and tell people, you know, that I cried and I'm like a 33-year-old man, what's happened? I'm a tough dude, whatever I wanted to tell myself. That was the initial scare. And now I cried. I'm a happy crier, actually. That's what I am. So like, we got married in September and I was like, I think I'm going to cry at the altar. I don't do this. And sure enough, as soon as those vows came, I'm like, I can't compose myself, you know, it was pretty bad. I was like, weird. And so I think for me, that was a very scary moment to be vulnerable and to even be vulnerable in front of other people, which is way more scarier. But once I got over it, it's like, well, this is who I am. And one of the biggest things that I've wanted to do with myself, especially, is start living unapologetically as myself, avoiding that thing that kept me stuck, which was look a certain way, act a certain way, because this is how you should be, to this is who you really are. The people that, what was it? I had it was a sales coach.
I think we just got a freeze.
Got a freeze?
No, I can still hear you, David.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
A sales coach literally looked at me and goes, the right people will reject you. And that statement stuck with me. It's like, well, if I'm going to be me, and I'm going to be this person, and I'm going to be this whatever emotions I carry, then I need to have the right people in my life. And the only way to have the right people in my life is to be me and have the right ones reject me and the right ones love me. And so that helped me shift and get past that initial fear of being vulnerable and figuring out who I really was and showing up that way for people.
Wow. Yeah, it's not an easy transition. Go ahead, Walt.
I was just going to say, I pretty much the same thing I was going to add on, especially in light of where our society is at, because like you alluded to, David, males are still expected to hold it in. I mean, not as much as we were 50 years ago. Back then, it was insane, but we still are expected to do that, So when we break through and start allowing emotions to come through, oh no, my God, he's showing weakness. Can't do that. Yeah. That's not easy to do. By the way, congratulations on your marriage.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very exciting. I love that.
My husband cried too at our wedding. Wow.
Yeah.
He tried really hard not to, and he didn't look at me the entire freaking time. He looked over my head. That was it. I was like, I'm right here. Look at me. He's like, I'm gonna cry. Yeah. You can see the photos when I had a horse and carriage take me up to like the end of the aisle, and then my dad and my brother helped me out of the carriage. And when I looked up, there's a picture of him, and you can tell his eyes are all red and they're starting to come down. He's like, and like held his breath for the rest of it.
Yes. Yeah. It was one of those things. I looked over my buddy's photographer. He's taking pictures, and his wife is doing the video, and I'm like, oh crap, here it comes. And there's nothing I could do to stop it. It was there. It was exploding. And I had to stop a couple of times when I'm doing the vows, compose myself, turn around and like not look at her, and then come back and look at her.
Aw, such a beautiful moment.
I went through the agonies of divorce about a year ago after a 23-year marriage. And so I'm finding myself back in the singles world again for the first time in a quarter century. And dealing with the current state of that world includes dealing with this whole, the man should keep it all inside and you should never show it to the lady, and, should generally not show it to anybody out there because that's not masculine, all that kind of thing. And I'm interacting with other guys in the singles world too, all ages, the whole age range. And it actually got to the point with me where I got so frustrated with how hard they were pushing that old, that it's basically a piece of BS is what it is, but that's what they were pushing and believing it. And they were advocating in terms of, they're trying to meet women. They've got to maintain their manually masculine approach in order to do it and so forth. And I finally just started crying BS on them. I was like, wait a minute, stop. You guys, you keep going on that route. You're not going to find anybody. Trust me. Anybody you find, you're not going to turn into a full-time, long-term relationship. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. But man, that mystique, I would have thought it would have been more reduced by now than it is. It has reduced. There is no doubt in my mind that it is a lot less than it was a quarter century ago. But boy, it is really, really strong. So I think I'm telling that story to kind of reinforce, not only do I applaud you for that, but I think you're kind of like the vanguard. Nate's part of that vanguard. There's the younger generation, more and more are breaking through saying, screw the old BS. All that's doing is holding us back.
Yeah.
It's not getting us where we want to be.
We
might delude ourselves, but what's that?
Yeah. It's not authentic.
Definitely not authentic. Yeah, there's nothing authentic about it. It's an entire lie.
Yeah, you're not the Tin Man.
Well, even he had a heart. He just didn't know it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. I think that the one of the biggest things for me was knowing what I should, allow to come through, and then being able to actually do it. So having those moments where my normal old patterns would be like, no, we don't do this. We're not going to be vulnerable, to going, okay, what was one of those moments? I'm about to retrack and redo what I've been doing. this is going to be real uncomfortable. You've got to do this part so that it becomes more natural. Like the habits we talked about, like we have to do this over and over again so it's natural. Even though it feels clunky, it feels weird, it's just icky to do. If I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it later. And so the idea of even having a kid made me think about who I want to be for the kid. So how do I show up for myself? I have to show them how to show up for themselves. We're also expecting, I didn't say that part too. So
congratulations on that too.
That, that kid in a way that shows him how to live better.
Yeah.
So when they get to that age, they're able to experience life more joyful rather than be suppressed and like act a certain way. And so the little bit of a fire for me too is to go, okay, not only are you doing it for yourself now, which is awesome, you're going to do it so you can be a good role model.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think a lot of the generation now knows about it. They talk about it, but the actual action to have it happen is really still challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we're at a tipping point?
I hope so. I really hope so. The coolest thing is we have so much at our hands media-wise to actually get really good information. Also at our hands is information that may not be the correct and may lead us down the opposite way. So you've got people that are really open to it, and you got people that are beginning to be against it. Both of them have the same platforms to talk. And as you've seen, the more, I would say, the person that's more aggressive in putting media out can tend to rise up faster, and that message may not be the best. But I do believe there's more awareness, which is great because that leads to us searching. And when we start searching for things, we're going to be more open to finding things, and that can help us change quite a bit.
Yeah, that's an important point. The fact is that the loudest voices get the biggest amount of attention. And like in the singles world, especially for the men's side, men's coaching and men's singles coaching and so forth, overwhelmingly they're in the old school approach, to the point where it's almost, I don't want to say comical. I started to say comical, but I don't really want to say comical because it's not funny, but boy, it's close. It's close. I mean, these guys, it's just amazing to me how far they push it. And yet, and they quote each other. They quote the leading voices. We talked about those loud voices, right? They quote the loudest voices, and they say, well, this is what this loud voice says about this and that and this and this. And it's always about, what's that masculine, keep it in kind of mentality. And yet none of them ever actually seem to look into what's going on in the real personal lives of the loud voices. They never actually look at that. Now, if they look there, they'd see, well, none of them have long-term relationships. None of them have been able to get to where they want to get to. They're just the loud voices. They're collecting a lot of money, giving away courses, but they don't actually seem to have the success in their personal lives. And in fact, the way the success is usually measured in terms of, well, how quickly can I get a date? How quickly can I get that date into bed? All that kind of stuff, rather than what's it going to take to actually create a long-term relationship with somebody. So that's what they measure. And when they measure that, well, yeah, the guy's totally successful. It's really, there's such a disconnect that goes on, and I'm like amazed by it. Why am I amazed? I mean, this is the same thing I saw before, I got married the first time, but I guess I'm amazed it's still there as strong as it is. I don't know. Sorry, we're a little off topic. I just had to go into that.
I mean, it's true. It is true that idea of, we're playing a role instead of being our authentic selves is much easier to gravitate towards. And then you got the media where it's like anybody can show what they want on that media.
Oh yeah.
And once you get sorry, my camera went to unlock me. Don't
worry about it. 99% of our listeners are audio only. They'll never know.
Okay. So, they have this, a lot of them have a facade or a false, presence, and you don't really understand it until you actually, get around somebody who may have that presence, and you see that back end and you're like, wait a second, that's not, doesn't look too good. And some of them they're happy, but, a lot of it tends to be that, it's a showcase. How can we show our lives in a way that people will either influence us getting money or we just gain more popularity?
How's this playing out in your health club? I mean, you run a fitness facility. That's something where people are mainly focused on just the physical side of, being healthy. But I gotta feel like these other aspects are also kicking into gear as part of your day-to-day business.
Yeah. So I really started coaching people, like the mental side of it. I went through a program that taught me how to do things, and then utilized that, started implementing it and talking about it more. And I really basically tried shoving it down people's throats. I didn't do it the right way. I was like, this is what you need to do. And people would get it, but it just didn't, it's like one of those things, are you ready to receive the message or not? Mm-hmm. And if you're not, and I'm shoving it down your throat, it's not going to be good. You're just going to be annoyed with it. So I backed off, and I just preach about, I shouldn't say preach, I talk about myself and what changes happened to me. And that's been a little bit more opening. But I do introduce the concepts when we do a sales consult. We sit down with them, when we do their first onboarding, we talk about these things. So it's beginning to at least plant the seed. So when we're in the gym and we're having conversations where I bring up stuff or other coaches bring up stuff, they start to at least plant that seed. And I'll see someone, a year later come back and be like, I want to make this change. I'm like, great, because it'll be the best change you have in your life. Physical fitness is great. I utilize my health as a driving force to create the life I want. That's what I think of it as. If I'm healthy, vibrant, energetic, I have the stamina, I can do anything I want every day. If I don't have that, I'm limited by my ability and my energy. So my number one goal is, how healthy can I be so that when I show up in this world, I'm able to show up the best of my ability. And if I don't have health, then again, I'm limited by the amount of health that I have. So that concept's me. That's what I think about when I first wake up. So health is important. How do we get aligned with our health? Well, we talked about this. It's what happens in your head. It's how you feel about it. I personally, and this is my opinion, I don't really like working out. It's tough.
You don't hear that every day from a fitness guru. That's not your typical thing.
You're like addicted.
Physical activity. I'll go play pickleball. I like how I feel afterwards. I like what it does to my body. The actual pain during the time, I'm not in it. I don't want to feel that pain. It's the results that's kept me coming back. And so when I think about the mental emotional part of it, I have a tie-in to what I feel like after I work out, after I've done it for a year, the changes that come with it. That's where I'm tied in, because I have a really good alignment with where my values are and what I want to achieve in life. And that has to be in check for me to get there. So that drive initially started off with looks when I was younger. I was what you called skinny fat is what I looked at it as. I had really small wrists and ankles, but my belly, and I remember it actually to a T. My buddy in Wendy's, I know exactly what I was wearing, reached across the table when I was 19 and a half, flicked my boob and goes, "You got a man boob." And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, I do. I've never noticed this, but I do. And then I started paying attention to the clothes I stopped wearing because I didn't feel comfortable. So I'd buy clothes, put them in the back of the shelf and not wear them. I get home, I put them on. I'm like, I don't feel comfortable in this. So initially looks drove me, but then once I started to understand how much better I felt, the more energy, I'd see people around me just, slugging along, barely able to make it. And I'm like, that was me. I never want to go back to that. So after the good looks thing happened, I started looking at health in a general of fuel my life. That's what I want health to do. And now it's a total different type of feeling. And it's a value that's more important to me than it's ever been before, which allows me to do the terrible workout thing that I got to do to get there. It allows me to be more excited to do the uncomfortable parts so that when I get on the other side, I receive the benefits because I know I can receive them. And that goes with the mental emotional part, right? It's uncomfortable. It's not fun. If you would have told me I had to go through this way back then, I would have not done it. Mentally, I was not strong enough to do it. Like, that's what I would have thought. I don't want to go into that very dark place. I don't want to go into that sad place. I don't feel those emotions. Now that I've done it at least once, or once I did it once, I should say, I realized the benefits. And I realized that for me to get what I truly value out of life, I need to go through that process. And so my desires and my actions started to align a lot better because I was able to create that connection between that value and my authentic wants out of life as me as a person and not what I was conditioned to desire.
When you were talking about that, I had two thoughts that come through my mind. One's another tangent, so I'll save that for a moment. But I'm wondering about your customers, your clients, particularly the ones that you coach, not necessarily the ones who just come in to use the facility, but who you're working with directly. I imagine you run into the same kind of issues with them that you ran into with yourself. How do you handle that with them?
Yeah. So one of our first questions that we ask before they come in is their why. And we say, look, you want to lose 20 pounds. Cool. Why? Because 20 pounds is just a random number. It's a data. Maybe it's what you used to be when you first graduated college and now you've had kids and, the responsibilities have kicked up and you just put your health on the back end. So why do you want to lose 20 pounds? What does it give you? What does doing this journey help you out with? And that some people will be more willing to talk about the real stuff and some people won't. They can't keep up with their kids at home. They get home from work and they're exhausted. The kids are boundless of energy. I know how I was. So if they're sprinting around, you get home after work and you don't have the energy, you just watch your kids do stuff and you're not able to even be engaged with them. So sometimes it's just really surface level. And then hopefully I can talk to them and get them to go deeper. We'll continue with that parent one. So like say someone comes in and they talk about low energy levels. Well, how does that affect your family life? How does it affect you with your kids if they got kids? They're so wild. They're really hard to keep up with. And it's like, okay, well, what do you miss out on because of this tiredness? What do you do at night? Do you come home? Do you hang out with them? Do you go play ball? It's like, I'm just so tired. I sit on the couch and we watch TV together. For me, watching TV together is like the lowest form of connection where you're both drawn on a screen, not paying attention to each other. So what you're losing out on in reality is memories, meaningful memories with your kid. And it's not just you. You're technically stealing those from them. They get to enjoy you less because of your choices health-wise. So it's like now we're getting really deep with this and we're making a connection that's a lot more emotional in a sense so that when they want to make a decision to be healthier, the drive is a lot higher. But at first, it's like we have to do those layers and dig down deep and ask. So some people will allow me to go that deep with them. Not everybody. But if I can really work with them there, or at least plant the seed for them to start thinking about it, they're more likely to take the journey and run with it and continue the actions even when it's tough than if they didn't have the whys and plan that are talked about. But they probably will just go through a 2-month program and then fall off because there's no real drive behind it. It's just that surface level initial motivation that we all get when we think about change. And then that goes away real fast as soon as things get hard.
Mm-hmm.
I love this. I love this on a number of different levels, not the least of which I'm thinking about how there are people in my generation who absolutely love to tear down your generation, the millennials, you and Jodielynn, saying, well, that generation, all they do is they spend all their time behind screens. They don't actually interact with anybody. And here you are, you're advocating exactly the opposite. I'm thinking, yes, listen to this guy. Listen to Jodielynn. There is the other side to the millennials. Pay attention. I love it.
Yeah, that's a true one. I do think a lot of people are beginning to go, I don't want to be on the screens as much. Mm-hmm. And I was probably about 2 weeks ago going over this information about the psychiatrist was talking about screens and why we're so addicted to them. And he said, if you think about it's not necessarily addiction, it's more of a compulsive behavior. So we understand we're not needing to be on these things and it's not really good for us. But we've done it for so many times. And if you take someone and take their phone and put it in the other room, you'll see how much they don't think about it. Like it goes down so low that they barely even realize it's in the other room. you put it in front of them on a table and they're constantly picking it up. So he said it's more of a compulsive rather than addictive, but it can be considered both. And because we know we hate it, we almost bring a negative emotion around it, right? Which makes it even worse. Mm-hmm. So if someone feels guilty for it and they hit a low with that feeling, what do they want? To pick me up. What picks them up?
Like pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So it's an idea that sometimes there's like a negative cycle between that feeling of having a negative connection to that actually can make it worse sometimes.
Yeah, I like that. I also, the tangent I wanted to go on a moment ago, I'm going to bring that one in because I think it's kind of funny. A year ago, maybe a year and a quarter ago, I had never heard of pickleball before. Never, not even once. Since then, my God, it's in almost every conversation that I have. And here you are mentioning it again. What did I, like, was I like asleep for the last 10 years or something? What on earth is going on here? That game has just taken the country by storm. It's amazing. Yeah. Do you know what the origins were of that? I don't even know what the origins are.
I don't know what the origins was. I know it gave people the ability who aren't athletic yet to pick up something that was athletic and have fun without needing to be around 14 different people. You know, you pick up one person, you go out there, you hit the ball back and forth. You can play a game and be decent in 3 to 4 weeks. So it gives you like that confidence. Oh, I'm getting better. I see results. I see changes fast. So you can get relatively from beginner to intermediate really fast, which I think is part of the reason. Because when you aren't great at something, it's really hard to stick with it for a year to become semi-good. With this, you do it in 4, 8 weeks. You're able to hit the ball back and forth. You're able to play games. And then health-wise, it's like one of the greatest things to do where you don't think about the physical activity. You're just playing. Like your kids, kids are physically active all the time. They're playing. They're not like, how do I become physically active? They're just playing fast. And I feel like this is a great thing that people as adults have picked up. They're rekindling like that childhood activity where it's just fun and we're out there doing it and we're not even thinking about it, but I'm being healthy at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking maybe I got to go get myself a paddle and learn the thing. I mean, because everybody's playing it now. It's just amazing how many people are playing it. Just incredible. I mean, I was not exaggerating. It sounded like I was exaggerating a moment ago when I said it's in almost every conversation. Almost every conversation I have, not here on the podcast, but locally, with people that I meet out in public, God, I would have to say at least 60 to 70% of the conversations touch on pickleball at some point. And I'm just like, what? I'm just blown away. Where did this thing come from? And why isn't it all over the social media? That's the other thing. Normally, when something becomes big, it goes big on social media. I've never seen it on social media.
That's because you are playing pickleball and not on social media.
Yeah, right. It almost makes me think like there's a new trend happening. Don't post it.
They're actually in the moment. That's so funny. I'd never heard of pickleball either. And then just a few months ago, people started mentioning it. I still don't know what it is. I'm like, okay, great pickleball. I should probably look this up. Sounds fun. Yeah.
Well, from what I understand, it's like what you said, David. It's very easy to learn. It's very easy to gain skill in it quickly. It's not something where you have to learn a tennis shot or something like that.
Yeah.
Form isn't huge.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I think about golf, for example. That was one of the things that, as I got older, more people started playing, and I did a couple lessons and played. That's a very frustrating game.
Oh, very. It's
very frustrating.
It should probably be renamed frustration because that's actually what the game is.
Yes. And you have to play often and over and over. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that the ease of pickleball has allowed us to get in and just be somewhat good. And I can come back in 3 months and play it and still be decent. As with golf, man, it's going that way. It's going that way. It's not going straight.
It was, fun fact, pickleball was created in 1965.
Was it really?
Yeah, I just looked it up.
Wow. My goodness. So it was created 65. So I was 8 years old when it was created. And it took me 58 years to find out about it. Something wrong there. Something's not working well.
Yeah.
I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it. We had to find things to do outside. And so it was like people were just searching for anything they could do outside. I know like they created a bunch of games called Spike Ball, a lot more like outdoorsy stuff. And so when that became popular, I think it just caught traction. People were like, well, I've been going outside now. Like, this is a great thing to do. It's one thing I can do. Let's do whatever we can do to have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great point. The pandemic actually inspired a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
Which actually speaks in my mind, and has spoken since March 2020 in my mind, to just how much health there already naturally is in the population. I mean, we tend to focus on dysfunction. We do it here on the show. I mean, there's a lot of dysfunction that's out there in a variety of forms. But how nice to know that there was so much health there that even in the midst of a health breakdown, people were finding ways to express healthiness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal. And it
Yeah,
doesn't get enough credit either.
I like how you said that, we tend to focus on dysfunction, because I do think that's a big deal. Like we just, I remember they talked about how we have just a natural and negative inclination to see those things. And it started way back when we were worried about safety by, being out in the wilderness and not knowing what's going to happen that day. We searched for danger all the time because we didn't have the tools. We weren't as safe as we are now. And so we have that inclination to go, well, look for the negative first.
Mm-hmm.
And two things happened. He said, if I tell you to look at a red car on the way home, count the red cars. And then I get you home and I say, how many blue cars are there? What are you going to look and tell me? I don't know. Because you were looking for that. So if we go through our day looking for the negative, which we normally do, we'll find everything so much easier than if I ask you what good thing happened today, people's faces go blank.
And by the way, if you follow up and ask the question, how many red cars did you see? The answer will be, well, a lot more than I thought there were. Let me tell you that.
Yeah. And that's a part of what, I know what your show's about is really getting people to start seeing and feeling differently. And that allows you to make better decisions. One of the things that I remember first hearing about manifestation was people talked about just the visuals and the memorization of what to say and how to feel. And it's like, well, there's action that comes with it, because that solidifies what you want to happen. So if you're looking at manifestation, it's the thought process plus the action behind it. And that really creates the thing you're looking for. But your thought process has to start the process, so your actions can start falling after that.
Mm-hmm.
Jodielynn, you never have to explain any of that to your customers, right? Your clients.
Never.
No,
Never.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, they're just
So
perfect. Never have to remind myself either. We were talking earlier about, 30 days and change your life. And, I think a lot of those programs have brainwashed us in society to think that there is an end date of like when you'll be perfect. And in my experience, and I think you guys would probably echo the same, that it's not. That there is no end date, that there's always the next thing to learn, to experience, the next part of you that you're opening up and experiencing all over again at these different layers and levels of oneself, that 30 days is not enough. Even 100 days for a pattern or a habit, it's not the end point. There is no end. It's a forever program practice of this is how I live my life, is striving for better and better.
Yeah, growth doesn't have an expiration date.
No.
Yeah, that's true. You don't lose weight to gain it back. You don't change your health to.
Well, a lot of people do. Let's be honest. Let's be perfectly blunt. There are a lot of people who do exactly that.
Yes, and yeah, exactly. They get to that end date. They're like, oh, I lost the weight. Now I just go back to my old ways.
Yeah, I'm done.
So, like, well, how did this happen? Why did I gain the weight back? It's like, well, you totally went back to your old patterns. And that's what got you there in the first place. You have to have a history of doing things before you get the outcome. So if we go back to the same history we were doing, we'll get the same outcome. And like you said, 30-day programs, 6-week programs have ultimately shifted and made us think that quick fixes are okay. Also, the fact that we can hop on Amazon. I was looking today to order something. I can have it here by tonight at 5 p.m. if I ordered by 1 p.m. That's insane. That's ridiculous how fast I can ship something to my house. And so my tolerance level for waiting and being patient is just short. So short.
And we're being taught to like shorten it all the time and raise that expectation that things just happen instantaneously. And if they don't, then something's wrong with you.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great, And it's very challenging.
The Amazon driver's getting the workout in.
They move a groove. Yeah, they are. Man, they're in and out. I see them hop out. They sprint into our doors and put stuff down, run back in, especially in this, we're in the cold right now, or what I would consider cold, I should say. Maybe 35. We got to 0, which was cold enough. But it's, you look at all our world, everything's fast now. How quick can I get it? How easy can I get it? And that makes the difficult things that we have to do as humans much, much more challenging.
And I think we're missing out on things too because of that quick expectation. Like, it's great to eat a cheeseburger in that moment when you're eating it. You're like, oh, so good. And then it's gone. It's like not a long-term satisfaction. Like you're, not really satisfied. That has become the culmination of our lives in this moment, or our society, is that we get it fast and it's quick, dopamine hit, and then we're on to the next. We don't savor or really appreciate the things that we have. Yeah.
That's so understanding like what dopamine and serotonin and all that stuff does for us and how we like to stay in that zone as much as possible. And then also like food, for example, back in the 70s-ish, they had a mixture where people started realizing what people want. Like, how do we sell more products? And it was, naturally humans like carbs and fats for energy. Like, it's a natural thing because we didn't have food way back then. And we just didn't. It was not normal to walk up. So when we had things with those in it, eat as much as we can. And so our taste buds are designed to feel good and light up our brains when we get those things. Like a cheeseburger, for example, is fats and carbs, buns, cheese, meat. Think about ice cream, fats and carbs. Most things that people crave, chips, fats and carbs, they're fried in oil. So there's literally a physiological point where our body is like, yes, give me that, because I'm getting 2 energy sources. Then you got the dopamine hit on it that happens right before you eat it. And that lights your world up. So your brain is so stimulated at that moment that it feels that way. And our mind says this is good, even though it may not be that great, but for that second. And then we're stimulated every day with everything. We're on screens, phones, we're constantly doing something. So I always think about, like, if our normal level as a human is a 3/0, and we're constantly pushing a 10 with all the things we're eating and visualizing with our screens, and everything we do with alcohol even gets our dopamine up. So we're putting ourselves at a 10 all the time. When we come back to that 3, it feels crappy. We feel like low and just not so good. And we're going, well, why do I feel this way? Well, I need to get back up to that 10. And in reality, 3's great. We just we've put ourselves at 10 so much, it doesn't feel good anymore. And so that whole thing of like that short-term hit is just a whole line of what we've been doing all day long, except for it's more of an extreme hit. And so we can finally feel that goodness, that excitement we're looking for, that we're not getting as much of when we sit down and have healthy foods, or even just going for a walk in nature. I don't know anybody that goes for a walk in nature without headphones on anymore. It's green headphones. No one, myself included, I had to really break that habit and just sit outside for 10 minutes and walk with nothing on and just look at nature. It was really challenging at first. I'm used to grabbing my phone. I'm used to having something in my ears. I'm used to seeing things that are moving fast. But walking in nature, but we can also utilize that as a way to ground ourselves, bring our stimulated mind back down to its normal levels. So that, to me, based on what you just said, if I have a cheeseburger once a week, that cheeseburger, the highlight is much higher than if I have something like chips and ice cream every day. Now it's a exciting part that I don't get all the time. So the joy is actually higher compared to if I had it every day, and it becomes normal. And it's almost like I have to eat this to even feel normal. Mm-hmm. Now I'm like, oh, on Saturday, we're going to go have some pizza. Cool. I've eaten really healthy and clean all week. I eat that. I get my highlight. It feels better than before. I have been, not having this stuff. Same thing with anything. I feel like if we're more toned down with any stimulus, when we actually experience life in general, whether we have, those lows, which we need in life to understand what highs are, then the highs are that much better. But if we're constantly high, we don't have anywhere else to go. And then that becomes that normal, I don't want to say boring feeling, but it's like we're bored. Mm-hmm. We've overcomplicated our lives so much that simple living, which is the best for us, is boring and not exciting. And so we don't get to enjoy the normal day-to-day things. One of the things I remember this person saying was, I think it was Jordan Peterson. He said, 90% of your life is what happens when you come home to your spouse and kids. Those interactions. Your vacations are probably less than 5%. Your excitements with, going out to eat, another maybe 5%. So if 90% are the normal things you do every day, you've got to learn to love the simple parts of it, or else your life is always going to be a roller coaster of lows with highs, but the lows get worse and worse, and the highs get harder and harder to hit.
Mm-hmm.
I love that perspective. In fact, when you were saying that, it reminded me of my childhood, because I recall very vividly. Now, I grew up in the early 60s and early to mid 60s. And so it was a very much father goes to work, mother stays home, takes care of the house kind of an environment. And when dad came home at the end of the day, it was an event. It was a major event. My brother, my sister, and me, as soon as that door opened, we were flying over there to get that dopamine high. That's what that was. We didn't know what that was. It was like, Daddy's home. That's all we knew, but that's what that was. Mm-hmm. And it was a big deal, and it happened every day. It was only one moment out of the day, but it was a highlight. It was a really big highlight. That's what I was thinking about when you said that.
Yeah. And think about those, and that's, goes back to that memories. Like, we're making meaningful memories, basically, and not just shoving it with stuff that doesn't mean anything. Mm. If I look back at my life, I'm not like, man, February 2024, I had that cheeseburger and it was so amazing. It's not going to be what I think about right before I die. No. I'm thinking about all the meaningful moments I had with people I loved or adventures I went on. Mm. That's where the things are going to pop up the most for me. So I want to utilize that as a way to direct my life. Is the social media that I'm looking at going to make me think I'm so happy I'm looking at it on my deathbed? Probably not. No. It's just sitting here zoning out because I'm too tired, watching TV while my kids play with their iPad or whatever, going to make me feel good? Probably not. So I need to make sure that I'm directing my life in a way that I have as many wonderful memories as I possibly can. And I can show up the way I want to look at it and be like, man, those are just amazing. I'm ready to go. I've done everything I could. I've literally lived my life the way I wanted to. I've gotten everything out of it. I've had the most meaningful time I've ever had. And I actually feel good about it. And that's one of the things I think about. Like, how do I create more moments like you just said with your dad? My brain's going, okay, that's an amazing thing. I want that. I want that really bad. Mm-hmm. So I need to be prepared to actually be, energetic to handle it health-wise. And I need to be able to get away from my behaviors that would detract from that.
Mm-hmm. And it's now equal opportunity because mom can come home. It used to be mom was always home, so she didn't get that dopamine hit play. She didn't get to be part of that. Now she can because she can come home and get the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a big deal too. as usual, we've absolutely raced through an hour, and so we need to find a way to kind of bring the whole thing to a close. But we need to do a couple things first. First, normally we would promote your product or service, but I mean, you run a gym in KC. It's not something that everybody around the country can go sign up for, so that doesn't really fit the mode. But like you told us before you came onto the show, you were here basically to develop your own ability to communicate, which, by the way, you passed with flying colors, so well done. And also to just explore things, to explore, concepts of mindset and the ideas around exercise and lethargy and all that kind of thing, which is exactly what we did. And you did a brilliant job on that as well. So I think I want to go directly to what I normally make as my second point. Well, I'm going to go to point 1A first, which is, do you like to receive contact from people who want to carry on the conversation? And if so, how do they reach you?
Yeah. So for me, I love these deep conversations. I have a 4-pillar system, and one of my pillars is deep conversations beyond the, hey, how are you doing? What's the weather like type thing. So this excites me. So I love doing this. You can look up at Instagram. It's Coach David Oquendo. That's a simple way to get with me. David Oquendo on Facebook will pull me up. Those two things. And then David Oquendo KC for Kansas City at gmail.com also is a great way to reach out to me if you wanted to have any conversations. I do the mental and emotional coaching, but I just don't do it on a large scale because I've got like a main thing. So I take on 1 to 2 people a month. So if someone very interested in that part of it, they totally could reach out. I've had a spot open, cool, but I also just don't promote it a lot because I just don't have that much spots to, have 5 or 6 people run to the door.
Okay, that's cool. By the way, just a side note, I got to ask, are you in KC, Missouri or KC, Kansas? I'm just kind of curious.
Missouri.
You're in Missouri.
It's funny because you got the battle of the borders, like Kansas City, Kansas. We don't go over to Missouri. KC, Missouri, we don't go over to Kansas. So you can see a shift. They're like, you live where?
Some towns it's living on the other side of the tracks. In Kansas City, it's living on the other side of the state border. That's pretty funny. One other thing that I want to pass along to you, which is something that I like to pass along to all of our guests. I noticed this it's going on about 2 years. It'll be 2 years in April, I think, that I first noticed. We have a tendency to skip over people who give back not in every way, but in certain ways. Typically where they're giving back in something that doesn't cost anything. It's free. You came onto our podcast. You're giving your time here. On those times when you are engaging in social media, you're giving stuff away there too. I'm sure you're sharing these kinds of wisdoms there as well. And we don't tend to get credit for when we're helping people in those ways because we are helping people often in ways we don't even know about. So I like to point out by saying on behalf of those people you've never met and you've never seen, thank you for what you've been putting out there and doing because you're making a difference in their lives. And thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's very important. And then I always finish up by going to Jodielynn last, and because she's really good at this, and just asking her, okay, tie this all together, put a bow on top. How do you actually summarize this so that we can say, yeah, now we know what the takeaway is today?
I have to take a breath for this one. I feel like we went all over the world today from thing to thing to thing, but really what resonates in my mind is something that David said, that I wrote down. I use my health to create anything I want in life. And I think that's a beautiful sentiment. And I think what really brings it all into perspective is presence. Being in your present body and being present with it and what's going on and present with your emotional state and your mental state and understanding where you are and having that appreciation for where you are right now. And that's creating the memories that we're going to remember on our last day of earth or before we close our eyes again, and making sure that it's the best that it can be. So thank you for that reminder, David.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm reminded of a very, very old TV host who used to finish a show by saying, thanks for the memories. And that's exactly what
There you go.
David, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for sharing what you've learned, particularly in the last 3 to 7 years. That's cool stuff. Keep doing what you're doing. You really are making a difference. And we need more of that. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.